So today is joining to me Brendan Kane. He's the founder and managing director of Hookpoint. He researched the insights about social content that went viral in a few companies, the author of two best-selling books, 1 million followers, and Hookpoint, that is the book that I just have right here. He has generated over $1 billion in revenue. And if you're in the social media space and want to build your personal brand, be more effective at marketing and getting that very competitive media, you're going to want to pay attention here. So, Brendan, thank you for your time and your team for contacting me to make this possible. The last year that we had this meeting was an absolutely great episode. So, today, I have a very few questions from people in my audience. For people who don't know you, please introduce us briefly. And of course, later on, we're going to discuss about social media, your vital content engineering, and the algorithm that's changing every day. And the first thing that people want to know about you is what mindset fired you up to become the great publicist that you are today. Because yes, I know that you work with Taylor Swift and Rihanna and MTV and Paramount Pictures and some other celebrities and companies, but you're more than someone who worked with these people. So please tell us what fired you up.
I mean, to me, it really comes down to just wanting to learn how things work, learning, how to grow in different parts of business, different types of marketing, different types of personal aspects. I think really what just drives me is I want to become better, more educated, and just learn how things work, especially complex things, because I think that, once you learn how complex things work and you can simplify it for yourself, then you can learn how to do it better and scale it. But in terms of like the intent of the question of like what fuels me, I think it really comes down to really learning and growing. It's not like, oh, I want to close a celebrity as a client, so that fuels me every day. It's more, and I think having that type of fuel, I think, will ultimately not lead to long-term success because it's not really a solid foundation to keep you going. For example, I started my career in LA. I lived in LA for 15 years, worked in the film industry, knew a lot of people in that, and there would be a lot of individuals, especially actors, that would move to LA to pursue a career in film, and you could definitely tell the people that were in it to be famous didn't last long because sometimes it takes years or decades to break through. But the people that actually enjoyed the process of actually acting and liked it, they stuck with it and ultimately had the level of success that they were going after.
That's interesting. So you saw this connection between social influence and building an audience to help launch big projects. And you can say that the mindset or this goal to become someone known in the film industry was there since you were a child, right? And become better and better and know how things work.
Yeah, I think so. I think we are all shaped by our childhoods and what happens there. But yeah, I think that there was that natural curiosity um, from early childhood. But I would say that uh, anybody can adopt it. It's just do it's, I think, getting to why you want to do something and finding the real motivation that drives you, like the first question that you have, and it's going to be different for everybody. So
Yeah.
I don't want people to take away my answer to what drives me to have to be their answer. Everybody has their own thing that drives them, and I think it's important for people to find that out for themselves and not try and take what drives other people and try and force that to work for them. Does that make sense?
Of course, that makes sense a lot because everybody needs to find their own path in life. What arouses my interest is to know what was the moment when you decided to work in the industry, in the film industry, which was the idea that came to your mind and decide to work in the film industry and say, I want to be part of the production of a movie or work with with celebrities.
I think it was my enjoyment of watching movies.
All right.
And, I would get very inspired and motivated by watching movies. And then eventually I was like, well, maybe I should pursue this as a career. And so I went to film school. I worked in the movie industry for several years. I still have some friends and clients in that industry, but ultimately, it didn't end up being the right approach or direction for me. But that's kind of how life goes. Is I don't regret it by any means. But again, to your question, it was really, and I still love watching movies and entertainment. I've just realized it's better suited for me to work outside of the industry than within it.
Awesome. So there was time where you felt this anxiety at work, or at least you saw this anxiety in the office. I heard you in another interview where you were worried about the launch of these movies because the production spent millions of dollars in the production of one piece of content, and later on you needed to make that millions of people know about this movie of this piece of content and to watch it, right? So what forced you up or inspired you to develop the bio content engineering? Because all started there, right?
Yeah, well, the the real reason behind it and why it's a core focus for our company is I firmly believe it's a necessity because when I started in social media in 2005, there's maybe a few million people on these platforms producing content. Today, there's 4 billion people on social media. So 4 billion people literally have the power to publish something on these platforms. Thus, it makes it extremely difficult to stand out and rise above the noise, to get your message in front of people. So, uh, understanding what it means to go viral, what it takes to go viral. And virality can mean many different things. For some people, it may be, well, how do I get my average number of views from 1,000 to 10,000 views a video? For others, it's like 10,000 to 100,000. We obviously do work with people that are in the millions or tens of millions, but that doesn't mean going viral has to be at that level in order for it to have meaningful impact on your goals or your business. But because there is so much competition for attention, social media today and being successful on a consistent basis. I'm not talking about going viral once or twice, but consistently going and understanding how to do it is almost like learning to speak a new language and mastering that language. So that's where we focus a majority of our time is really understanding who's having a lot of success with virality, what type of formats are they using, storytelling mechanisms, and things of that nature, so that we can glean those insights of how they're telling their stories and apply them to the clients that we work with, or apply those insights to people that are creating content all over the world so that they have the best chance of reaching the masses and having the impact that they want. Because what we have found is virality is not really about the message or the subject matter that's being talked about. It's the way it's being talked about. Anything can be made to go viral today. Taxes go viral, insurance, psychology, real estate, any aspect of life or business can be made to go viral. It's not about the subject matter, it's about how you're telling a story to make the average person care about your subject matter. And that's a real art and science of how you do that.
That's really interesting. A theme that I talk about in my podcast, or at least I try to, and you see one point of view and some other an obstacle. But for you, it must be like natural breathing to create viral content. But for people who are more stuck, who still are late to the social game, or who are quick to dismiss because they consume the content and they feel dumb at creating or pursuing the trends, how the better content engineering works exactly.
Yeah, the fundamental core aspect of the process is research and insight. So what that means is we go off and study influencers, viral videos, viral brands, and we are looking and breaking down why they are going viral. Because you can't expect to go viral on a consistent basis without understanding what drives virality. It's the same principle as if we were going to learn the piano. When you sit down to learn the piano, you don't just start composing original music. You start learning by playing other people's music, like a Mozart or music that has been developed before you. You learn to play the piano through that, and then once you've mastered that, then you can start creating your own music. It's the same thing with content. We have to first study and learn the formats, the storytelling elements that the most successful content creators are using in order for us to become a master ourselves. So what our team does is we are studying influencers and these top content creators, but when we're studying them, we're not just looking at their success, their most successful videos, we're looking at their underperformers. And this is a very important distinction because most people, for example, will talk about trends. It's like trends is a big thing right now of, oh, if I use this trending music or this trending sound or this trending format, I'm going to go viral. The problem with that is it's kind of like the iceberg analogy of what they say is the tip of the iceberg above the water is only like the 1%, but 99% of the iceberg, the body, the mass of it is actually under the water. It's the same thing with trends is people look at the top 1% of the trend working, but they don't look at the 99% of the people that are failing with that trend. So you can literally, and we do this in our work, is you could have a content format and you could have one person using the same format generate 10 million views and another person using the same format generate 1,000 views. So what we're doing in our research is we're comparing those highest performers against the lowest performers and determining what are the differences in terms of how they're constructing their content, how they're telling their story, how are they using this format that is determining this discrepancy between 10 million views and 1 million views. So that's like the core element of the process, because most people, the blessing and the curse with social media is we can click a button and post something. That's a blessing because anybody can publish a piece of content to the world. The curse is most people, because it's so easy, don't put a lot of thought into how do I best leverage this tool to tell the most effective story to have the impact around my message, my subject matter. So that's why we're studying these nuances between the highest performers, like the 10 million view video, and the lowest performers, 1,000 view video. And those numbers are just general numbers, but just to kind of prove or to explain kind of how we look at it.
Okay, that's a game changer. So you've been sharing a lot about best practices of what we should do or what we could do when you're studying these accounts. And one that I remember is the quality versus quantity, because I see a lot of people that are posting and posting and posting every day that doesn't perform like they wanted, and it causes the common sense that you shared in the Invitado Summit a few months ago. That is wrong because it's what the 99% of the brands and marketing agencies are doing. So I will say that the first thing that they should do is to switch the way they create the content. And second, I have seen a content that is really good, but the algorithm have buried them in the crowd.
Yeah, it goes into setting a foundation. Like again, going back to the analogy of playing the piano, is if every day all we did was just sit down and play the piano without studying music or learning to play other people's music, you wouldn't really get better. You wouldn't be learning. It's the same with content. Is just because you're producing content every day does not mean you're getting better at it. Is you need to understand and study what other people are doing, how they're doing it. And you had mentioned a big part of our process, and one of the myths out there is that frequency is the key to growth. I'm not saying that no content creators don't have success that way, but the content creators that do have success already understand what it takes to go viral, what it takes to create effective content that grabs and holds attention. But the sheer act of just posting every day, you typically are not getting better because you're not studying what other people are doing and trying to apply those learnings to what you're doing. So that it's a really important part is focusing on getting better with each piece of content, learning with each piece of content, instead of just, oh, I'm just going to post every day and then hope that yields the goals and success that I'm looking for.
Nice. Okay, so what I found out with this process, the process that I learned in your book, is that the creative process starts first by studying your own content and see what's wrong. And I expected experience this a lot of times in my podcast at the beginning, because not even my mom was listening to it. And then I remember that I said, what I'm going to test, the hooks I learned in the book, the hook point, actually, the hook point book. And for example, I pitch I don't remember exactly, but I saw that a lot of people say this food will make you fat. And then I flip the script and say, this is the calorie that won't make you fat if you take it at certain time. It was a little like a clickbait, because the science says that no food will make you fat. It worked, but it worked. The way that I pitched the hook point worked, actually. So that wasn't my case. I think it was shut off, lucky, but how someone can develop their creative process, the exactly way that you create the hook points, and the process, the creative process that you follow, how the people can develop their own creative process.
Well, I think the first place to start is understanding the pattern and breaking the pattern. So in the example that you had point out is, foods that will make you fat, like something along those lines, people have probably heard it a million times. They probably know, even if you have a different perspective, they may think, oh, I already know what he's going to say. Or maybe it's just not that interesting, versus you flipped it on and said, I don't remember the exact thing you said, but you understood the pattern that didn't work. So that you were looking at for a different way to break the pattern and stand out. So that's a way to look at it, is you're talking about a specific subject matter, understanding that subject matter, you're not the only person talking about it. And most people have either consumed content on that subject matter or heard lots of people trying to grab their attention with that subject matter. So your job is to break the pattern, stand out, and show that your perspective or what you're going to talk about is going to be different than what they're accustomed to hearing or worth hearing about. So that's a big distinction, is how do you first understand how people are talking about what you want to talk about, and then how do you ultimately break that pattern by hooking them in a different way. Now that's one element of it. The second element of it is, how can you make the average person care? So if we're talking about food or gaining weight or losing weight or being healthy, how do we take the approach where we would make the average person care that may not care about that subject matter at all? Because that's where real growth, that's where real virality comes from. So Joe Rogan is a master at this. He will get like a astrophysicist, a paleontologist, a historian, talking about subjects that the average person typically doesn't care about. But because of the way that he's broaching the conversation in terms of the questions he has, he's able to attract people at the highest levels, or attract the masses to pay attention to the conversation that he is having.
Yeah, and the question that I tend to realize, like you said, I think they're not as creative. They have to, but at a certain point,
one way to shift your mindset is, don't go into a podcast or an interview with questions. Go with the hook point. So if you're going to talk about something, if you're going to interview somebody, think about, like, if you were given the cover of a magazine, what would be the title of that podcast or the magazine, or that podcast or the interview, that would make somebody stop on a busy street, pick it up and read it? And if you're struggling for ideas, then go to other interviews, go to like a Joe Rogan podcast, type your subject matter into Google News, and find like hooks that really capture your attention and put it in a Google Doc, and then start taking out words of what they're talking about and put in the words of what you're going to be talking about. Because we often get ourselves into the traps when we just focus on good questions because we're not controlling the answer, versus if we go in with a solid hook point, then we know we can guide the conversation in a way to get the output that will ultimately stand out.
That's mind blowing, actually. So, going back to my story, the process that I went through with my podcast, and I point this out because thanks to your book, my channel already have 35 million followers on Spotify and growing, and partnering with some brands like Nestle and SmartFit, putting in practice your lessons from 1 million followers book, how people can viralize their content. Because I believe there's a lot of ways to achieve it. And not only by dancing and posting memes or monkey sitting or acting weird, and see these people spending a lot of money in their material and never see the light. And another example of this is Google Ads. That is not a piece of content at all, but the titles is what I think the creation process is similar.
Well, again, it's what we, one of the important things, and one of the reasons it doesn't work oftentimes is they're not studying the market enough. They're not doing enough research out there. And just give you an example. So in my book Hook Point, I interviewed a friend of mine, Craig Clemens, and his company Golden Hippo has sold $2 billion worth of products through social media ads. But when he first started, and he's probably one of the top copywriters in the world at this point, but when he first started creating hooks for ads, they would always get rejected by his boss because they weren't good enough. So what he did was he took the best performing hooks from other copywriters and put it into a document, and then again started plugging in his products into it to learn how to get better at it. Most people, when they're not getting good at hooks, is because they are falling into the trap of falling into the pattern of everybody else, sounding like everybody else, or not coming off any different than what they've heard about the product or the subject matter. So, it's, I'm going to keep coming back to it because it is the fundamental best way to get better. Is you have to study other content creators, other ads, what other people are doing, and learn from their successes and learn from their failures to fuel your advancements going forward.
Okay, so there's a lot of problems with some clients, Since a few months ago, I started a marketing agency focused on doctors, and a few of doctors that I work with feel stuck in the creative process sometimes. For example, I pitched the idea to create their content, and sometimes they didn't catch it. They think that to create better content, they have to show dancing in the camera or do dumb things, pointing out that as a doctor, they should not dance in front of the camera, of course. So what's the way for this type of audiences to viralize or create content?
There's many different ways to tell a story. And oftentimes, well, first off, what I want to say is you don't have, if you're a doctor, you shouldn't be dancing and like doing other stuff. Like I would agree if somebody pushes back on that, because there's so many different, like even on TikTok, people think TikTok is all about dancing. But if you look at Dr. Julie Smith on TikTok as one of the people that we've referenced and broken down extensively, she's not doing any dancing, and she's talking about very complex subjects around like ADD, depression, anxiety, things of that nature, and having a tremendous amount of success, consistently going viral. So we kind of look at it of like your content and message doesn't have to change, but the container, the way that you contextualize it and bring it to market does. So to give you an example is like Dr. Julie Smith, she talks about anxiety and like panic and panic attacks. Now there's so many different ways that you can take that core subject, that core message, and express it to the world. Like you could just do a listicle, or people could just talk about the technical side of what's happening. But what she does that's so successful is she puts a for this specific subject, a clear empty bucket on a table and starts pouring water into it. And she says anxiety and panic is like this water flowing. It keeps raising and raising and raising. And if you don't do anything to cope with it or to release it, then eventually it's going to reach the top and overspill. And then she says, but if, and she takes a drill and starts drilling holes into the side of it, if we do meditation, if we have a healthy diet, if we have exercise and keeps drilling holes into it, the water spills out and the level lowers down. So what she's doing is she's taking this core subject and message about anxiety and panic and contextualizing it and sharing it in such a way that can resonate with the widest possible audience. But she's not diluting her expertise. She's not changing the information. She's changing the way that that information is expressed. And that is the key to success on social media. It's the key for success with hooks and things of that nature, is how do we take our zone of genius and share it in such a way that stands out at the highest levels, grabs attention, and breaks that pattern. And it's very nuanced, and it's definitely not easy, but it is simple. It's like you have to take your message and make it so everybody cares about it. And that's like Dr. Julie Smith has done that in a very effective way around her subject matter, where most people, most psychologists or doctors would fail because they're not contextualizing it in this unique way.
So now that it's clear, the most important step is the context between the content and the title. Because unlike, like I said before, I got lucky by realizing a piece that I think was clickbait. So once we already have this perfect piece of content, how the algorithm can work with us, not against us. Because I've seen a few changes in the last 3 months, and I don't know if this is part of the game, but the most recent change is in the length stories. They used to be a 15 seconds long story. Now they're 45 seconds longer, but I also saw that the audience want content that has expiration date and no longer need content that is there forever. Of course, always there's have to be content that lasts, but I don't know if this is part of the game or not.
Well, the algorithm only cares about one thing, and that's retention, meaning the longer people watch content, the more they're staying on the platform, the more ads they can serve, the more profit they generate. So they are always going to favor content that can hold attention for longer. So you talk about stories increasing to 60 seconds. It's not because the audience is demanding it, it's because the algorithms and these platforms want to keep people on the platforms longer. So that is your job as a content creator, is how are you telling effective stories that A, grab people's attention, but B, holds their attention for as long as possible. Just to give you another analogy is think about Netflix, for example. So think about Netflix as an algorithm. So they have make investments in TV shows. So how do they make the determination whether they are going to do a new season of a TV show? Well, they look at how many people watched the first season or the last season, and how many episodes did they watch? Did they watch all of them, and how many people watched them? If a lot of people didn't watch and stop and watch it, then they're not going to renew it for a second season. If a lot of people stopped and watched the whole thing, then they are going to renew it to the second season, because it's keeping people as subscribers on those platforms. It's the same thing with social media, as they want content, and they want content creators that proven that they can produce a piece of content that when they seed it to a lot of people stop and watch it. And if they see a lot of people stop and watch it, they're going to seed it to more and more people. And if you as a content creator keep doing that consistently, they're going to seed your content out the gate to more and more people. So this is like a big distinction between, somebody just starting out and like a Mr. Beast. Like Mr. Beast has historical performance over years of producing content. So whereas the person just starting out, each piece of content they produce, maybe initially it's sent to like a few hundred people because the algorithm's saying, hey, you're a new content creator, you haven't really proven yourselves, we'll give you a shot to a few hundred people, but your content needs to perform if we're going to send it to more people. Versus Mr. Beast, where it's like you've proven yourself over time, so we're going to seed your content to a few million people and see how it goes before we distribute it to more and more people that are not following you. So I would zone out all of the noise that you hear about shifting algorithms and all of that and just focus on how can I create content that grabs and holds attention for as long as possible. If you can do that as a content creator, you will win no matter what change happens, what new platform, what new feature comes through.
Okay, so leaving that point clear, I will say that the content is far way more important than the variables like the time when you publish, hashtags, and so on.
That stuff doesn't really matter. I'm not saying you can't do it. To me, it's the wrong thing to focus on. Focus on the content. A hashtag's not going to make a crappy piece of content good. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to watch, like, for example, if you were on Netflix or on iTunes or something, hey, I'm going to watch this movie because it has a great hashtag. Would you ever watch a movie because it has a great hashtag to it? No, you're going to watch the movie because the trailer looks amazing or your friends told you that they watched the content. It's the content. It's nothing else. And it's the same thing as, I'm not saying that you can't focus on those things and do them, but it's not going to make you a better content creator understanding what hashtags to use, nor are you going to trick the algorithm or these platforms to seed your content just because you use the right hashtag. It's either your content is good or it's not. Because remember, there's 4 billion people on these platforms. They have billions of pieces of content to choose from. They can go to other content if your content is not holding and grabbing attention.
Thank you so much for that, Brendan. What you say is really, really interesting, actually, and revealing, because a lot of marketers, and me included sometimes, we think that the variables have a lot of weight in the success of a piece. So for 2023, is there any trend that you think that it's going to work with the masses, like, I don't know, the format or kind of content changing, or the focus or on the focus on the camera or so on?
What we look at and what I highly recommend is focus less on the trend and focus more on what is the format that you can get really good at. Okay. Like, for example, my friend Alex Dempleski, he just surpassed 20 million followers on TikTok. He's the photographer that approaches random strangers on the street and offers them a professional photo shoot. He's been running with that specific format for 2 or 3 years, and he is a master at that format. So instead of trying to chase the trends or changes, really identify a content format that you're excited about creating, that you think you can get really good at, that can bring your message to the world, and just get really good at studying those nuances and understanding that format. That's a far better use of your time and energy than, okay, let me just follow the trends and see which trends I can jump on this week or next week or things like that.
Okay, thank you so much, Brendan. I really enjoyed this meeting. To end this, you're giving a course, right? A masterclass, the viral trends.
So we have a private mastermind where every single week we meet, and our creative team breaks down a creator, a viral format, or like a viral brand, and we're explaining these nuances. Okay. We're explaining why they are going viral. We're comparing the high performers against the low performers, and we're showing you how to do it. We give you access to our research sheets and an activation guide, and give you the ability to ask questions. But we do this every week, and you can access our past research and insights as well, because we just know that, again, in order to master virality, in order to master getting good at content, you need to understand why other people's are good at creating content.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. If people want to learn more, they can go to goviral.hookpoint.com.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for your time, Brenna, and the knowledge you share with us. I definitely will be there in your masterclass. So I cannot wait to apply. I'll check it out actually. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, take care.